A Bullet in the Ballet by Caryl Brahms and S.J. Simon. Abridged and read by David Rumelle. A Bullet in the Ballet, Episode 1. In the mid-1930s, the ballet Stroganoff is opening its London season with a performance of Stravinsky's ballet Petrushka.
Since it's probable that any book flying a bullet in its title is going to produce a corpse sooner or later, here it is. Dressed somewhat extravagantly in trousers of red and yellow check, its white jumper is scarlet with scarlet and jade. It wears a yellow bouffant wig, a Russian clown's hat and undertaker's gloves. It is bending over the top of a booth, its arms swinging limply over the sides. There is a neat little bullet hole in the centre of its forehead. It died magnificently in the presence of 2,000 people, most of whom had paid for their seats. Petrushka. And on this occasion, none other than the famous dancer Anton Palouk. Palouk had danced energetically and must have been very annoyed when the bullet robbed him of his curtain calls. 6 under contract. At any rate, Vladimir Stroganoff, though still alive, was definitely furious. For the past 2 years he had jerked his company safely, if hysterically, through Australia, Harbin, the Gold Coast and Chicago, and here, on the opening night of his London season, they had gone and bumped off his leading dancer. It was not that he felt any particular affection for Palouk. In fact, privately, he was inclined to think that Palouk had been asking for it for years, but good Petrushkas were scarce. If it had been Ernest Smithsky now, who mimed his way so conscientiously through Lac des Cygnes, or Stanley Simpson, his indispensable secretary. But they'd picked on Anton, and Petrushka was in the bill again on Wednesday week, and it could not be taken out on Wednesday week, for this was to be a gala performance in honour of Benoit's birthday. And even though the veteran had declared that nothing would induce him to come over to see Palouk, he, who had seen Nijinsky, Boylm, Wojtkowski, this had been suppressed, and all society had promised to be present. Stroganoff scowled furiously at the clustering stage. "Moves the body," he commanded. "Evite! Take it away! Forget it! Prepare the next scene!" Fortunately, the audience had no idea what had occurred. The stage manager had rung down the curtain with commendable promptitude, and what's more, kept it down. The more determined of the company, unaware of the disaster, cursed him in a variety of languages and pushed their way to the front of the curtain. The gallery clamoured for Petrushka. Stroganoff, with what he afterwards insisted on describing as great presence of mind, tripped over the tassels to announce that Palouk had suddenly been taken ill. Gradually the clamour subsided to a sympathetic murmur, and the audience trickled out into the foyer. "I'm simply frantic about Anton," said the man with the flaccid mouth. "Simply frantic, my dear. He must be frightfully ill to miss his curtains." "Dying, I would imagine," observed his companion dryly. He'd known Anton for 11 years, and the nearest the lad had come to ever missing a curtain call was when the theatre caught fire in Santiago, and he'd had to make do with 3. "A poor performance, I thought," observed the second critic. "The death scene was singularly unconvincing." "And his passion for the doll distinctly lukewarm," said the girl who knew everybody. "It is," announced the man who knew everything. Outside, the stage doorkeeper was fast losing his patience. The clamouring mob around him did not seem to understand plain English. "No," he said for the 105th time, "you can't see Mr. Palouk." "I've got an appointment. I always see Anton after a performance. We want to know how dear Anton is." "He's dead," said the stage doorkeeper, his patience evaporating. He regretted it immediately, as half a dozen determined critics pushed their way past him and started fighting for his telephone. But the show must go on. This is unfortunate, as the next ballet is by that advanced choreographer Nivashno, and depicts Ajax laboriously wrestling with the lightning to Tchaikovsky's 1812. So, though poor Anton is in his dressing room, together with a balletto medico, who for once has found no difficulty in diagnosing the cause of death, Stroganoff and his secretary Stanley Simpson, the audience are back in their seats, and the curtain has been rung up on a miscellaneous collection of rocks. But though the critics must stay and watch, we're under no such obligation. The flying squad tourer pulled up outside the Collodium Theatre and disgorged its occupants. These consisted of 2 police photographers, a police surgeon, Detective Sergeant Banner, and Detective Inspector Adam Quill. The first thing you notice about the inspector is his height, which is 6'3". The second, his good looks, which are those of the matinee idol stamp, lacking only the practised profile that distinguishes the latter. Fair-haired, a good-humoured mouth, large, capable hands, and an unemotional manner. Not supernaturally intelligent, but then not naturally stupid. He is not altogether without experience. This is his second big case since his inspectorship. In the first, he arrested the wrong man, and this time he's determined to be more careful. He's not a man much given to advanced speculation, but judging from the cold, precise message received over the phone from the theatre manager, it does not seem to him that this case will present many difficulties. From what little he knew of the stage, actors were a jumpy crowd, and it should be a matter of mere routine to discover a suspect to fill the 3 cardinal clauses in the detective's handbook: means, motive, opportunity. As likely as not, he reflected, he'd be greeted by some hysterical young woman already in the throes of repentance. But he was in fact greeted by the stage doorkeeper, who refused to let him in. Fortunately, Stroganoff appeared in time. "Oh, poor Anton! He's in his dressing room for the last time." Quill looked up sharply. "I thought he was shot on the stage." "On the roof. It was lucky," he added, "that it was the end of the ballet, so the audience they know nothing and are happy." "Then you move the body?" "Mais naturellement," said Stroganoff. "You cannot have a body in Ajax. In any way, the decor, it is different." "Am I to understand," asked the persevering Quill, "that you have moved the body and calmly gone on with the performance?" "Mais certainement," said Stroganoff with evident self-satisfaction. "We are well organized, yes." "But were you not aware," asked Quill coldly, "in England the police like to see everything it was at the time of the event? And now this is no longer possible." "Mais oui," beamed Stroganoff. "Pour nous tout est possible. All will be put back on Wednesday week." This was too much for Quill. "Wednesday week? Sure, we get Petrushka again then for Benoit himself. The who shall dance Petrushka now that Antony's dead, I cannot decide. Pavel Bunia, perhaps, but then maybe he's too young, no?" "No," agreed Quill involuntarily. "But you wish to see poor Anton, yes? I will take you. He's in his dressing room, the star's dressing room. It was in his contract. I will give it now to Pavel, and if Rubinska's mother, she is angry, poof, that does not matter." Accompanied by his photographers, the police surgeon and Sergeant Banner, the latter reluctantly detached from his fascinated study of Ajax's defiance, Quill followed Stroganoff up the stairs and into the dressing room. The dressing table revealed the usual assortment of dirty towels, cold creams, mascara, rouge, and false eyelashes. The golden sylphides wig, due to be worn at tomorrow's performance, was already laid out, awaiting the wig groomer's attention. But readers are asked to suppress their gulps in their throats. They did not see Paluk's sylphides. It was horrible. On the sofa, nonchalantly covered by a Spanish shawl, tricorn, lay the body of the dancer. The fair-haired young man who'd been sitting on the chair beside it sprang to his feet as the procession entered. "Stanley," said Stroganoff sharply, "why are you not in the box watching the performance for me? Go away. You must not interfere with the inspector who has come to arrange an assassin for us." Quill quite liked this novel angle on his duties, but as his staff seemed to be enjoying it too, he suppressed his smile and walked over to the sofa. "Where," he inquired, "is the doctor who examined the body?" "Gone back to see the ballet," volunteered Stanley Simpson. "Stalls, 11th row side. I made a point of inquiring in case you wanted him," he added with evident self-pride. "Call him," said Quill. Stroganoff was delighted to see Stanley go. He was always delighted to see Stanley go. Stanley had no vision, only a head for figures, and figures were easily the most unpleasant factor in Stroganoff's life. Sunnily he turned to the inspector. "You have everything, yes? Then I go to rub up my speech." "Just a moment," said Quill. He turned to the police surgeon, who by this time completed his examination. "Perfectly straightforward," said the latter. "Shot at the range of about 10 yards or over. Death instantaneous. Suppose you want the bullet, so let's take the body away and get on with it." Quill nodded, and the body was duly carried off, though not without a howl of protest from Stroganoff, who argued that he needed the corpse's costume for the next presentation. By this time, Quill had an uneasy feeling that the proceedings were not going to be as straightforward as he supposed. As yet, he had but the vaguest idea of the setting of the crime, He knew that it had taken place on the stage towards the end of a ballet called Petrushka, and that the victim was on some sort of roof. Why or how he had yet to ascertain. He'd been shot in full view of the audience, but the range of the shot eliminated the further parts of the house, and it seemed unlikely that anyone in the stalls or circle could pull a gun and get away with it. There remained the boxes, the orchestra, the wings, and possibly the stage itself, assuming the scenic structure permitted. He would get that scene reset sometime, and before Wednesday week at that. Manfully, he set himself to discover further details. This took rather a long time, for at first Stroganoff flatly refused to believe that Quill did not know Petrushka intimately, and when finally convinced, showed a strong tendency to take him through the ballet step by step. In this he was energetically assisted by the balletto medico, who'd arrived with a heated criticism of Ajax on his lips, and appeared only too eager to lay his 40 years of ballet-going experience at the detective's feet. At the end of 20 minutes, Quill began to collect a hazy impression that Palouk had thoroughly deserved to be murdered, if only because he was no Nijinsky. Somehow he managed to gather that Palouk had died at the moment when Petrushka dies in the ballet. He'd been standing on some sort of a roof. The stage, save for some sort of a magician, was deserted, but a few minutes previously it had been overflowing with the entire cast, plus a large number of extras. Palouk had been standing centre stage in full view of the audience. No shot had been heard, which argued a silencer, and as the position stood, any one of about 200 people might have done it. "But," finished Stroganoff, "you will see for yourself what a good work it is. You lucky, lucky man. What an ecstasy that is coming for you. It is arranged then that you come to my box on Wednesday week, and afterwards," he added, as one conferring a great honour, "I introduce you to Rubinska." "I'm afraid," said Quill apologetically, "I shall have to see it before Wednesday week. In fact, I would like you to reenact the scene for me at once, just as it was at the time of the performance, with everybody who was on the stage then on the stage now." "Pardon?" said Stroganoff. At the fourth time, Stroganoff understood. "Impossible," he said in triumph. "First there is Palouk. He is dead. One of my men will substitute for him." "But it is trop bien compliqué," protested Stroganoff. "No policewoman will be able to dance it, even if he could learn quick enough." "But my company is tired," said Stroganoff. "Come tomorrow and all should be prepared. Mais moi, je ne vois pas la nécessité." "It is very necessary," said Quill, "and I prefer to see it now." "Tomorrow, at 12, said Stroganoff firmly. "And even so it is a great favour I do you, for we should at moment rehearse Giselle." "You would not come to Giselle instead? No, it is very beautiful." But Quill was spared the embarrassment of an answer by the appearance of Stanley, who announced that Ajax was over, and that the audience, while not exactly clamouring for Stroganoff, were nevertheless making sufficient noises to warrant his appearance before the curtain. "Oh, I come," said Stroganoff. "I have a speech to make." In the wings, the fascinated Sergeant Banner edged his way through and ranged himself behind his superior. This was life. As Quill listened to Stroganoff's lyrical improvisations, from which the only fact to emerge clearly was that this night was the greatest night ballet had ever known and would ever know until Wednesday week, Quill found himself wondering uneasily where his next step in this mad world would lead him.